Kia ora everybody and welcome back to Theology, where we drink tea and talk theology. I hope you don't mind the awkward sunlight at the moment. I can hide right at the back. The sun's coming through at just the perfect angle to cast beautiful lights on my face. Today we are drinking English breakfast tea and continuing our series talking about the basics. So last video I said that I was going to tell you what blend English breakfast tea was of, and if you didn't bother looking it up for yourself, I have looked it up right now because I forgot I was going to do that until right now. It is a mix of Assam, which is a region in India. It is mixed with Ceylon, which is Sri Lanka. I don't actually know if that's how you say it right, but anyway, it's Sri Lanka. I meant Ceylon, I know how to say Sri Lanka. And Kenya, which is in Africa. So I was wrong, it's not three Indian teas, it's an Indian tea, an African tea, and a Sri Lankan tea. This is a part of our ongoing series talking about the basics. So, and we are here exploring another field of theological research. Today, the field of research of theology that we're focusing on is historical theology. I might be able to sort something out. Historical theology is theology about history. So it's like, how has the Bible been interpreted throughout generations of the church? It traces kind of the history of the church, the different doctrines and interpretations, and the formation of these various things. This is all important because our understanding of faith now is very different to what it was in first century Judaism, because we have access to different materials. We've got 2,000 years of understanding and unpacking the Christian faith behind us, so that we really know exactly what it is we're professing we believe. I'm not saying the first century Jews didn't, and there are many problems that they had that we still have that kind of go round and round, but it's really looking at where have we come from? What shoulders do we stand upon? So through the history of the church, there have been really important unifying beliefs. Also beliefs that have separated or made something distinct about that time or place, or created schisms in the church to begin with. For example, there was strong biblical interpretation that Jesus would come back in 1000 AD. And however, as far as we can be sure of, he did not. And that doesn't mean, and they were wrong in thinking that, and there are things that we are definitely wrong about in our understanding of the Bible today and how it applies to our age. But that was how they were understanding the Bible in light of their times, and that shaped a lot of how they behaved, which has then gone down and shaped different traditions and different things that have formed since then that are now in the part of modern Christianity. There are ways that we interpret the Bible now that are shaped by ways it was interpreted previously. So just war theory is a theory that's been developed over many generations of theologians, of theological scholars looking at different things and going, how do we understand this? And a lot of our understanding of just war theology comes from Thomas Aquinas, who was writing a good few hundred years ago. And even from that, from St. Augustine, who was writing even longer ago. So understanding where the interpretations that we hold on to today and where the interpretations that we have since let go of came from can help us understand why we believe what we believe today. Because our faith is shaped by different dogmas and doctrines and traditions. And trying to say I just believe what the Bible tells me to believe. If you've ever listened to somebody speak on the Bible, if you have ever engaged in any other form of any other form of scholarship on the Bible, then there is an element of historical understanding that shapes that, because there is a context to everything that we understand. Because everything comes from a context, we cannot avoid it from its context. Well, we can avoid it from its context, but when we do it badly, we can lose a lot. We can learn a lot about how the Bible has been interpreted through the ages and how that has paired and worked with the development of different Christian faith practices. And we can go, hey, there are these practices we used to do that we don't do anymore. Why did we stop? Should we bring them back? And we can ask these questions when we know. But we can't ask these questions if we don't know. We can't look at what other people have done if we don't know that there are other people who have done things. And we can't learn from what they've done and the mistakes they've made if we don't look at what they've done and the mistakes that they've made. We can learn a lot about what we could do differently and sometimes even things to avoid. I've even made a video about this sort of thing before, looking at the German Christian movement and the church in Germany in the 1930s. It also helps give us a context for why certain beliefs were professed in the way that they were and shaping how we can use them appropriately and in a more relevant way. God is unchanging, but the world we are in does change. So how we interact with the world through God has to change, because I can't interact in the world the same way a person 50 years ago did, 100 years, 1,000 years, 2,000 years, and even back to the Old Testament, back to Exodus. The world we live in is so different across all of that. And I can't engage with it in the same way. It would be ignoring so many important developments that have happened since then, different conversations and debates that have happened, and just the way the world changes over a lifetime. It helps enable us to continue in the way that God has designed for us and not to accidentally adopt the way in the world instead. If we aren't aware of the fact that there is a context to the world that we live in and that we are interpreting the Bible through a context, through a specific cultural lens, which historical theology helps illuminate to us are the different cultural lenses, particularly when we try to not approach history with the lens of everything is bigger and better than it was, because there are definitely ways that we have gotten worse than we were. When we approach it with the lens of how is God working through history and what is like the theology of history, what is going on, then it can help us better understand. It can always increase our understanding, and that is what I'm all about, is faith-seeking understanding. Church history is very closely related to historical theology. Historical theology is slightly more related to the teachings of the church, where church history looks a little bit more at the way the church as a whole has developed over time. I've kind of conflated the two in this video in some ways, because there are so many little nuances between things that sometimes get a bit fussy and I think are a bit overly pedantic at times, but what can we do? I am but a small person who does not care enough to want to make change in that area. But both of these, the teachings of the church over time and the way the church has developed over time, are both important for giving context to beliefs. Church history can also be helpful in understanding why we have rejected a certain belief to begin with, even if it isn't necessarily heretical. Sometimes it is actually heretical, and we need to tread these areas with careful conversation and in significant dialogue with other areas of theology as well, like biblical theology and systematic theology and such. But by understanding where we come from, we can also have a better idea of where we're going. It can help us be realistic and keep our focus on the future hope of Christ, not yearning for some mythical good old days that we only long for when we don't approach history with the ambiguity and nuance that it deserves. We can see how the church has developed over time and how the teachings of the church have developed over time, and we can see the ways that it could continue to develop. We won't know everything that is going to happen in the future, of course we don't. But we can see what patterns continue to repeat. We can learn from how we dealt with ancient heresies that still come up today and go, maybe what's the truth here that they're speaking that I can speak now? It can help us keep grounded in truth and not get lost in context. By understanding the context, we cannot drown in the context and culture of our own world. Because it is learning how to hold the eternal truth in an ever-changing context. That is one of the tensions that we're living in. We have a tendency to airbrush history, to avoid ambiguities, complexities, nuance, things that we don't like, or only focus on the things we don't like and not focus on the things that they might have done better than us. But by engaging truly with historical theology and history itself as a discipline, we see ways that this has been done. We see the ambiguities and complexities that do exist in every age. But also we can work towards continuing to keep that open mind and working towards seeing that around us, seeing the way that all of these things are actually really connected and how history builds upon itself. We are where we are because of what has come before us. And neglecting to understand that, I think, really just causes more problems, because even if you don't want to engage in historical theology, stating that we shouldn't be listening to what history has to tell us is, I think, quite dangerous, because it's what should be engaged with then if we can't engage with some stuff that's been tried and tested over centuries. Now, there are problems with history. There are problems with the way theology has been done historically. This is part of what we look at. This is part of what we want to understand. So, cheers. If you have any thoughts on historical theology or any areas of the church history or previous church teachings that you know of that you find interesting, please drop them down below. I love learning new things. It is such a huge field, and it's one I'm actually engaging with a lot more because my degree is in Christian thought and history. So I'm doing a little bit more historical theology. So we'll probably talk a lot more about different areas of that in the future. I will see you all later. I hope you're all having a good week. Bye!